Hello and welcome to the first in a new series where we'll compare and contrast an episode of Star Trek with an episode of the Twilight Zone, while tying in current events of today. This is Mr. Miles Edward O'Brien. He's Chief of Operations at a Federation space station on the edge of the wild Cardassian frontier. He's about to find out just how wild things can become when he's declared obsolete. Fun tributes to Rod Serling aside, our overall topic today is how court systems in fascist societies in science fiction operate, and what they can teach us about today's judiciary. From the Twilight Zone, we have the Season 2 finale from 1961, The Obsolete Man. And from the Trek franchise, we'll be looking at DS9's Season 2 penultimate episode from 1994, Tribunal. Not only are they both television about the nature of courts and fascism, but they're also tied together by the actor Fritz Weaver, who plays the Chancellor/Judge in the Twilight Zone and O'Brien's lawyer in DS9. There are times when his showmanship playing up each position looks very similar.
The state has proven that there is no God!
But we want justice, not chaos in this court, no!
While Miles O'Brien is a fan favorite in Star Trek, every time Burgess Meredith shows up in the Twilight Zone, you know it's going to be a good episode. His most recognizable appearance is probably in Time Enough at Last, but out of his 4 appearances in the show, I think this character, Romney Wordsworth, is his most prolific. A librarian who's prosecuted for the act of being a librarian in an authoritarian state that's outlawed books.
A librarian having to do with books.
Which is something Meredith himself can relate to, as he had only recently been removed from the Hollywood blacklist that came out of McCarthy's Committee on Un-American Activities.
The question is, have you ever been a member of the Communist Party?
I'm framing my answer in the only way in which any American citizen can frame his
Then
answer
you
to
denied-
my question.
One of the greatest actors of his day was sidelined by a government authoritarian group based on unfounded fear, which is sounding really familiar today. What also sounds familiar here is the banning of books.
Since there are no more books, Mr. Wordsworth, there are no more libraries.
While we're not at that point yet, we've been going through the purge of books in the United States in recent years. Many that have been required reading in decades past, like The Diary of Anne Frank, To Kill a Mockingbird, and Animal Farm. Another old favorite cry of those with a victim complex is the call to think of the children.
Think of the children, sir!
To the point in Tribunal that we see several Cardassian children as the only members of the gallery as they grow up seeing what justice looks like. They must see that the state is there to protect them, even if it's the state just making up the problems they claim to be protecting them from.
You deny all knowledge of this crime, then?
In both shows, the court is purely for show and is merely an extension of the greater power of the state. The spectacles of the court and subsequent executions are televised, both as deterrents to others that might challenge the state, but also as a form of entertainment.
All of Cardassia is watching these proceedings.
His execution is scheduled for next week.
See, they brought this equipment here early this afternoon.
Both encourage their victims and families to cry, beg, and show remorse for their made-up crimes.
But it's also good for the populace to see people like you confess, so that the public can see them weep.
Please, Mr. Wordsworth, turn around, face the camera. Last year in the mass executions, we televised around the clock.
One of the interesting things in both episodes is the heavy use of light and shadows. While these can be interpreted any way you'd like, in the Cardassian courtroom there are corners that are dark and spots that are purely in the light, with light through grating giving us a sense that darkness and light both go to die in the Cardassian courts. The Twilight Zone in its black and white format uses it even more interestingly. The accused is forced to speak their truth in the light, but must step back into the darkness while the jurists announce their predetermined sentence.
Obsolete.
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 I concur.
Showing them to be in the wrong, and only the state's narrative is correct in the light. The twist in the end of both episodes is also the same, as the process is turned back against the state. In DS9, Cisco simply uncovers the Cardassian plot to set O'Brien up to suffer, and the most important thing is never making the state look weak. So they essentially drop their case rather than have their farce of a process be exposed. Similarly, in The Obsolete Man, Mr. Wordsworth tricks the chancellor that sentenced him to seeing him just before his execution and locks him in where a bomb is going off soon. Being that the state in this story has also outlawed religion because they've proven God isn't real, it's seen as weak to invoke his name even for the sake of mercy.
Let me out in the name of God, let me out!
You have disgraced the state, you have proven yourself a coward.
When the Chancellor on live television asks Mr. Wordsworth to let him out in the name of God, both the invocation of a banned deity and his weakness to be seen begging causes him to be rendered obsolete.
You have been removed from office. The field investigators have declared you obsolete.
When he refuses to submit to the court's authority, he's attacked by those in the gallery, and we're left on him being torn to pieces by the angry mob. This actor can't catch a break in fictitious fascist courtrooms, as O'Brien's lawyer inadvertently wins his first ever case and leaves us with the idea that he will be neutralized in place of Miles for having failed the state.
You won.
They'll kill me.
Rod Serling's outro is too long to play in full, but it perfectly summarizes the message that we should be wary of. The late Chancellor was only partly correct. He was obsolete, but so is the state, the entity he worshipped. Any state, any entity, any ideology that fails to recognize the worth, the dignity, the rights of man, that state is obsolete. If only we'd listened 60 plus years ago. I guess when it's been less than 20 years since a war against fascism, you're a little more sensitive to the topic. Because today, some disturbing trends are emerging. While we may not be in the dystopias we see in these 2 episodes of television, yet, we do seem to be headed in that direction. Currently, our courts in the US are not merely an extension of the executive and legislative branches that are falling deeper into fascism by the day. They are actively trying to push back on some of the most egregious things happening, but their powers are becoming eroded. Even our Supreme Court, that the president stacked in his last term, is making orders that are currently being ignored by the executive branch. Judges are being arrested simply for asking the brown shirts, ICE agents, to follow the normal practices that have always been, by not trying to deport someone who's currently undergoing trial. And then we get to where we completely diverge from the episodes we've been talking about, to a place where courts aren't even used as a tool of propaganda, but completely subverted, just deporting people with no due process to a prison in a country they don't even come from, that no one has ever been released from. I don't know which is worse, a state that uses trials for show, or a state that doesn't even believe in the judiciary at all. But the lack of trials serves nearly the same purpose as the farce trials we've seen. It's control of the population through fear. The fear that you can be disappeared at any moment because you don't live up to the ideals of the state. And to anyone saying, well, these are just criminals that never should have been here, great, prove they're criminals. I'm all for punishment and deportations based on the rule of law. But the problem is, we've already seen mistakes made. The wrong people with no documented criminal history deported, and completely innocent people being targeted. A family of US citizens that recently moved into a house was wrongly targeted by ICE and other agencies, who threw them on their lawn in their underwear and confiscated all their electronics, money, and bank cards as evidence, and they now have nothing because of the incessant need to purge undesirables. That's pretty much the warning we got from the Twilight Zone more than 60 years ago. As for the 30-year-old Deep Space Nine episode, the thing we need to watch out for now is making things up to demonize ordinary people like Miles O'Brien. All it takes today is to say the magic words, Tren de Aragua, and any of us can be disappeared to a Salvadoran prison with no due process, never to be seen again. To pull out a quote from another bit of Star Trek, TNG's The Drumhead, Jean-Luc Picard uses Nora Satie's own father's words to best her by saying, "With the first link, the chain is forged. The first speech censured. The first thought forbidden. The first freedom denied. Chains us all irrevocably. The first time any man's freedom is trodden on, we're all damaged. Just because we're not at the gas chamber part of fascism yet, we are at the concentration camp chapter. Fascists never stop at just one group of people, and if we don't speak up and protect our fellow man, it won't be long till we are the ones declared obsolete." I leave you today with my own version of a classic poem that came out of 1940s Germany by Pastor Martin Niemöller. First, they came for the Venezuelans, and I did not speak out because I was not Venezuelan. Then they came for the transgendered, and I did not speak out because I was not transgender. Then they came for those that spoke out against them, and I did not speak out because I do not speak out. Then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak out for me.